Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another exciting episode of the Moonshot Podcast, where we talk to exciting, amazing people doing exciting, amazing things. And today we are joined by the world famous, world renowned, the magnificent Mandelynn Moses. They're all M's. So, Mandelynn, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so Madeline is a woman of many talents. If I begin to list everything that she does and what she's about, we'll be here all day. So suffice to say, she is a change maker. She's a philanthropist. She's a published author. She is a mother. She is an amazing human that is looking to change the world with very large aspirations, which we will get into momentarily. So Madeline, again, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I love being here. I'm excited to learn about this podcast and see where this conversation flows. That's the best part of doing these. You just never know where the conversation is gonna go. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and also Madeline, I was hoping that you could kind of add to my very, very brief and almost cryptic introduction to you, just to kind of give us a little color, as they say, in your introduction. So would you like to add to my introduction so our audience knows a little bit more about who you are, maybe a little bit about the journey you've been on?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't talk about myself as well as you talk about myself. That would definitely seem a little arrogant. So, but that was an amazing introduction. Thank you. Yeah, so I've recently become an author. My book is right here. So I'm not your villain, I'm your mother. So I'm really excited. This has just been just one of my greatest accomplishments, becoming an author. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I grew up a very rough background, very abused, unloved child. And I guess through my journey, I had to learn love. I had to learn love. And so that's my journey in this world is just spreading love and kindness and yeah, like that, everybody deserves that. And so whatever it is that God puts me in to do, I just plan on doing it and hope to do it with as much love as possible.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So we're gonna like get into this, or maybe we can get into this right now. So, like I said, there's many different aspects to Madeline, and she is extremely, if I were to say this, sensitive to energy, as well as is deeply spiritual. In fact, uh, spiritual almost in a very advanced level. So if I can borrow from the Star Wars universe, she is beyond Jedi level skills. She's like a freaking master Jedi, okay? Yoda's master or whoever the top Jedi was that trained all the Jedi. So think of her as that with her
Mm.
level of awareness with the spiritual realm and what are those various levels above and below of the spiritual realm. So she is like very, very sensitive to that. In fact, is very deep, has deep knowledge in that space as well. In fact, she began to uh, I know Madeline from my brief time in Phoenix, Arizona, when I visited there briefly, had some amazing conversations with her, and she mentioned this word, which I think may resonate with my two illustrious co-hosts here, called the Akashic Records. So,
Mhm.
Madeline, can you just break down for our listeners who maybe have heard this word or words for the very first time? What does that mean?
Okay, I was gonna ask, like, how deep do you want me to go into the Akashic? So the Akashic records, they're basically our blueprint. It's like our personal library for our soul. So every experience that we have gone through gets stored in what's called the Akasha, right? And so, every day we get a reset. Like at nighttime, we get a reset, and everything that we've done, everything that we've said, all of our behaviors and intentions get recorded back into the Akasha. So, oftentimes, we judge ourselves and if we're doing something good, if we're doing something bad, but there really isn't no such thing as good or bad. Everything is intention. Everything is intentionality, right? So, I'm gonna give like probably an extreme example because it's like, what do you mean there's nothing bad? But let's just say, let's just say you kill somebody, right? Now, let's just say it's because of hatred or jealousy or greed or power or something like that. That's going to get recorded into the Akasha. But let's just say you were defending yourself, and that was the only decision that you had to defend yourself. Now, the intention of that was pure love for yourself, right? It's the same act, but the intention was different, right? So if you could just generalize and say killing somebody is bad, but is it bad if you were protecting yourself or your family or, a dear friend or another person, right? No, it's not. And so all of that gets recorded back into the Akasha, and then that's how our karma, our karma gets cleared away is through our behavior towards ourselves and towards other people. So the most important, if not the only important thing that's on this planet is our behavior, because all that gets it recorded back into the Akasha.
Wow, that is interesting. So just to kind of like borrow from that briefly, if let's say now I know that like for example, Jains. So there's like I'm originally from the tiny village of Mumbai in India, and one of the faiths is Jainism. So Jainism have this belief of not wishing harm to anyone to the extent of like they wouldn't even kill a mosquito, even if the
Hmm.
mosquito was attempting to bite them or whatever, they wouldn't even do that. So they have like an extreme view on like the sanctity of life. So my question to you is like if, for example, a mosquito was, like coming to like bite me and I either swat it off or, slap it, just to kind of get it gone. And that let's say ends up killing the mosquito because hey, I don't want to get bit, nor do I want to get malaria or dengue or whatever. So for something like that, does it still hold that, the thing about I'm protecting myself? So that's why I did it to protect myself.
Yeah, well, funny story. I always tell God, I was like, when I die, the very first question I'm gonna ask is why mosquitoes? Like I get everything else. I get everything else, but mosquitoes, that one I just don't get. So it's funny you use that analogy, but I've studied under like so many different religions, and one of them is the Buddhist religion, right? The Buddhist philosophies, I would say, and it is like not killing anything. Like I seriously like even to like pick a flower or pick a leaf off of the tree. Like I seriously feel so guilty doing that, but in that regards and what you're saying, I was like, dude, I hate mosquitoes and they love me and like I'm killing you. I ain't about that life. But again, it goes down into intention, it goes down and everything is intention and looking at everything as a sentient being because everything that has life is sentient,
Hmm.
right? And so down to a blade of grass to a human being, there isn't any separation there. Like for whatever reason, humans feel like we're separate from a piece of grass
Hmm.
but we're not. The only difference between me and a blade of grass is free will. That I have the capability to make my own decisions. Where grass and a lion and a snake, they're all off of just straight intuition, right? They're just being guided by the forces of the universe. But human beings, we get to make decisions. That's the only difference between me and a blade of grass.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. Interesting. That's very, very deep and profound. Josue, Robert, do you have any questions for Mandelynn? Because I know that this is an area of interest that I know is very close and personal to both of you.
Robert, you want to?
Sure, sure. No, I find it very interesting what you're saying. I'm familiar with the Akashic records, but I have a different understanding of it. I think it includes all behavior of everybody. It's not just good behavior, you know. And my question to you, Mandelynn, would be, why do you need to label behavior as good or bad if we're all one and all connected? Because I don't see the need for that. I'm just curious what you think.
No, and let me rephrase. I didn't say good or bad. People in general, we judge ourselves and we judge other people by those terms, good or bad. And the Akashic, like what, so the Akashic records, I'll go in a little bit deeper because he did say basic for people who didn't know. So we'll go in just like a little step deeper, right? So the Akashic records are definitely for the collective, but then they're also collected for us personally. So it doesn't just take good behavior or bad behavior. Any behavior that we elicit onto ourselves or other people is recorded in our own personal blueprint. And that personal blueprint is found in those spongy discs in our spine. That's where the Akashic records are stored. So in the spine, or the spine is, obviously our life force. Each section holds a different library. Basically, if you're going to go to a library and pick out a book, like behind me, I can pick out a book on a different shelf. And so in that Akashic, there's different things that get recorded in there. Our behavior, regardless of what the behavior is, gets recorded at nighttime when we sleep. And so that's when those subtle bodies, they get separated, gets recorded into our emotional body back into our spine when we wake up.
Right. But my understanding of the Akashic records is similar to what I call the source.
Mhm.
All the information, all the events that ever happened in the past are accessible in the source if you know how to tap into it. So it's not just your personal behavior, it's all the information, all historic events are part of the records. I mean, there's no actual way to quantify it beyond what your belief, what might be in my belief, because it's not that kind of a substance, but that's my understanding of it. So, and also just to the point of, the example you used about killing somebody, if it was self-defense or not, what about the idea that everybody is playing their role to perfection and everybody is doing exactly what they should be doing on their own trajectory? How does that like fit in with your philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, so like well, so first of all, this like just talking about the Akashic records, this could be like a whole retreat for like 9 days, right? So this is gonna be 9 days. Everybody has access to the truth, which is source. Like that is accessible to every single person. You are absolutely 100%. Everybody can tap into that, but some people, it's like I'm not going to give a child a philosophy book when they can't read it, right? And so it's not accessible to somebody who can't read at that level yet. So you're able to access wherever the level you're at. That's number one. And then the second part to that, actually I kind of forgot the second part that you had asked. What was the second part that you asked?
You're muted, Robert.
Yeah, I was saying that, the way I look at it is that, everybody in their life is playing their role to perfection.
Oh,
Even historical figures that you want to label as evil, like somebody like Hitler. Well, they played their role to perfection. We have examples of that right now in the government that we have. People are playing their role to perfection. But and for myself, I don't make a distinction between the Akashic records and the source. To me, it's like sort of the same body of information. Everything that existed is somewhere. So, and I totally agree with you that, most people, they never even heard of the source, let alone have the ability to access it. So it does depend on what level you're at. But I think it's important to distinguish this good and bad behavior thing, because the human proclivity to label everything, especially behavior. When you look around, people just love to put everything in a little tidy box. But really, I think it's a disservice to do that to people and to their behavior. You know, so if we just accept people what they're doing. This is where they're at. This is perfect for them right at this moment. I think we have a real grasp on the situation.
Yeah, so one of the things that I study is the I Ching, right? And so the I Ching is the 64 codes of consciousness, okay? And so and in those codes of consciousness, which are you'll find that written in every single religious text, it's just not called out on it, right? But anyways, there's the 35th code of consciousness. The shadow is impatience, and it goes from patience to timelessness. And what that means is it's not the Webster dictionary version of what patience is. What that means is every single person on the planet is on a spiritual journey. It doesn't matter if you can, like, let's just use Hitler for an example, right? No, there's no way he's on a spiritual journey. Absolutely. If you are here on this planet, you are on a spiritual journey, whatever being you are, whatever form you're in. And so really what that means is being patient with them where they're at on their journey and accepting and loving everybody where they're at in their journey. So I don't look at people and say, well, that's a good person or a bad person, because that's judgment, and judgment isn't of the source. That is not of truth. And so it's like just being patient with wherever they are at their journey. And even like my dad, for instance, I'll use an example. My dad, he's not forgiving himself of a lot of things that he did in my childhood, especially with me. I had the hardest upbringing out of all of my siblings. And I told my dad, I was like, Dad, you got to let this go. Like you just got to let this go. And it was bothering me so deeply that he wouldn't let some of this go. He's had several heart surgeries. And then I just had to realize, you know what? This isn't his lifetime. This isn't he'll come back a few more times and he'll let this go in some other lifetimes. But I love you, and I love you, and I respect you for where you're at currently on this journey. And I look at every single human being in that way. And we are all an expression of source. And like the world is a giant puzzle, and we were each given a little puzzle piece in our role on this planet to play this symphony of what I call it. This symphony, we all have a role in that. And respecting people in their roles is just one of the highest virtues, is just respecting people for where they're at and not judging them for where they're at.
Well, that's what I was saying. You have to accept people exactly where they are and to take the position that they are perfect where they are, just like your dad in his own way. You would love for him to forgive some of the things he may have done to you, but he doesn't have the capability or the wherewithal to do it. And you have to accept that. And it's perfect for him right now. You have to take that position. But I had another question for you. What are some of the ways that you share love in your life?
Well, that's actually a really easy question. I love myself. And because I love myself so deeply, Rajiv can attest to that. Because I love myself so deeply, and every single human being, we are all an expression of unconditional love. We just forget it. We forget it. And when you love yourself so deeply, that's all you do is you exude that to other people. I don't really even have to do anything, and it's like, it's exhausting. I was having this conversation with Rajiv, like I walk into a room and it's just instant magnetized, but it's because I feel that. And me being myself, me being authentic, and me honoring myself is the highest duty and responsibility I can do to love other people.
Right. I think that's really beautiful. And in a way, I think you're saying, if I'm not mistaken, that you create your own world and you are in your world of love, and that's who
Absolutely.
you are. Right.
Absolutely. You create everything as a projection screen. You're the
Right.
projector and you're just looking at everything in a screen. So what
Right.
is the world that you want to see? You see a world of love and beauty, and that's what you're going to get. And
Right.
that did not used to be my world, absolutely not at all, but it is now.
Um,
And I just, and I struggle with that often because I'm like, I just want everybody to see what I see. Like, I wish you
right.
guys could see what I see, but I can't explain it to you. It's an experience, you
Right.
know.
And of course, once you love yourself at the level that you're saying, and believe me, I feel you on that, and then it becomes an issue. How do you deal with all these external events that are going on around? How do you absorb them or block them so that you can maintain that sense of love for yourself and give that love to every situation you come into?
Man, that's a fantastic question, because so many people struggle with that, right? And again, this goes into the Buddhism, you know. It's like you've got to be that calm in the storm. You've got to be sitting there under the Bodhi tree, you know, watching the chaos around you, because it doesn't, you know, New Age spiritualism has really it's just taken such a far left turn. Everybody just thinks that once you hit this state of enlightenment, then all of a sudden all you're going to see is peace, love, and light and happiness and, you know, and unicorn shit. And it's like not true. That's not going to happen, right? Like there's going to be chaos. And the brighter you shine, the more people are going to want to attack you because you're triggering them where they're not shining. So you have to just be at such a high level of peace in yourself to be able where that peace is unshakable even in the chaos, because the bigger you get, the bigger the chaos. Like it's just the world that we live in. So it's like, you know, so meditation, and finding those times to like unplug, to separate yourself from the energy of the collective energy of, you know, of your partner, of your children, of the haters, whoever it is, whoever loves you, whoever hates you, whoever doesn't care about you. Just being able to connect back into yourself is hands down the most important key.
Right. Josue, I know you're into energy too, and I feel like I'm monopolizing the questions of
It's
our lovely guest. What do you think?
Madeline, you've led us down this journey of sharing with us your background and the challenges you had in your life, and have demonstrated using some of the terms on energy and consciousness and self-love. But in that moment of darkness, when there didn't seem to be any light, how did you crawl out of that darkness? What led you there out of the darkness? If you can share some of that perspective. Or
Yeah, I mean, I was in a very abusive relationship. I was 13 when I met my kid's dad. I was 14 when I had my first daughter, 16 when I had my second daughter. I divorced my parents at the age of 15. And so I'm, you know, a mother of two. I have no family. I have nothing, right? And I'm now with this abusive alcoholic, right? And so that was my life. Very dark. And I was with, you know, and so it was just his family, and me, you know, and I'm the outsider, you know. And you know, I had no self-worth. I don't want to say I had little self-worth. I had zero self-worth. And there was a moment, it's actually written in the first chapter of my book. Um, I was coming home one day. I was coming home one day and I was unlocking the door to my house. And I just heard this voice and it said, run. And I was like, okay. I unlocked my door and I ran as fast as I could to my bedroom while my kid's dad was chasing after me. And we are fighting to get the door. Like he's trying to fight to get open. I'm trying to fight to get the door closed. And I finally was able to get the door closed and locked. And I sat there in the corner of my room, just like bawling my eyes out. And I was like, if he gets into this door, this is going to be it. He's going to kill me. There's nothing left after this. So I decided I was going to just take my own life. So I sat there and I went through a list of the people in my life that I would feel comfortable raising my daughters. And after going through that list, I realized that there was nobody in my life that I would want to raise my kids besides me. So I sat there like telling God, like, why do you hate me so much? Like, I'm just your joke. Like, I'm like like, I was born to be your joke. I felt so forsaken. And in that moment, it came from my solar plexus, but I heard it up here. And this really deep, loud male voice said, because you allowed it. And I was like, what? Because you allowed it. And I closed my eyes, and my entire life, all I saw was like rainbow colors. My entire life flashed before me in my eyes. and I saw my life from a completely different perspective. And I opened my eyes and I was like, oh my God, I did. And in that moment, I was like, I got up off the ground, took my contacts out, put them in. I went to bed and I woke up that next morning, put my alarm at 7 o'clock. I was at the courthouse at 7:30 getting a restraining order. And from that moment on, I made the absolute commitment that I am 100% responsible and accountable for every single thing that happened to me. That I am not a victim. And because of that, I created the habit of asking myself, how did I create this? How did I create this? How did I create this? And so I broke myself out of the habit of being a victim and taking 100% accountability for my life.
Wow, Madeline, that is so powerful. So I guess since you kind of talked about the book, I gotta ask, right? So I have like two questions about the book, and if you can hold it up, I think it would be great for context. So the first question is, the title of the book is what is the title? I'm not your mother.
I'm not your villain, I'm your mother.
Right. I am not your villain, I'm your mother. So the first question is why that title? And the second question is related to the book again, is you have kind of like a very interesting visualization on the cover of the book. It's like this dark, almost gothic visualization of it. So the question is about, I guess, what inspired that, but also what inspired that very specific title.
Yeah, so so I have two daughters, and I went through hell. My life was hell. Like I had my life was hell. I've gone through every single kind of abuse. And I've walked this world alone for the most part. And every single person on this planet has a story. They have a journey. And so what we had talked about earlier, like it is very important for me to not judge another human being. You went through these specific circumstances in your life for a reason. For a reason. And I truly believe the reason, regardless how many lifetimes it takes you, the reason is to serve other people who've gone through those same similar circumstances. And in this lifetime, I took on a lot of karma, a lot of experiences, so I can learn true compassion. And compassion is only taught through experience. And so I'm not your villain, I'm your mother showcases the journey that we all go through, and it plays homage to the fifth commandment, which is honor your mother and your father, and you're deemed a fruitful life. It's the only commandment with a promise. And so when you honor the road and the journey that you've gone through, you then open up those gates to heaven. But if you sit in victimhood of your circumstances, you're not going to get there. And my kids have judged me, in their adult lives very harshly for everything that I've been through. And as a parent, you're often villainized, because parents don't look, or kids don't look at you as being humans. They look at you as being a superhuman. And you're like, it's hard taking care of these little humans, but also having to take care of yourself especially in egregious situations. And when you do not honor that, honor everything that has gone before you, whether that's your physical mother and father, if that's your whatever the spiritual mother and father it is that you honor, you're not going to ever be free from victimhood. You'll never be free. And so honoring that is the key to freedom. And so the book, the picture, I really wanted it to have Mary Magdalene vibes, and I wanted the focus on the human and show the beauty and the sadness of parenthood, and the branches in the back represent coming out of that tree of life, and how the obscurity of when you become a parent, you become obscure and everything is focused on this little one. And so that was the story behind my artwork on the front of the book, and how important it is that we start focusing our attention on rearing children and raising families and get out of the distraction and the chaos of politics and war and global warming and all of this, because we need to put the focus back on the kids. And then this is how we'll save the world.
Wow, I mean, that is like tremendously profound. And I got to ask you, Mandelynn, what you've just shared with us, was that either alluded to or explained somewhere in the book, either on the cover or in the back or in the forward or in the
Yeah, I
epilogue?
mean the introduction of the book, the introduction shares that all of that.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, go ahead, Josue and Robert. I know that you had something to share.
You brought up a lot of topics that are affecting our world, our society in general, and I call these effects, signs and
Mhm.
symptoms and effects. I was a medic, and in the medical field, it's you someone demonstrates a certain symptom, but there's always a root cause if you dig deeper.
Absolutely.
And it's understanding that the cases of abuse are in our society are astronomical.
It's ridiculous.
What is the root of it? Where is the cause that we've just taken this left-hand turn to this path of just dysfunction in many ways as a society? And I think you nailed it when you talked about how healthy a family is. What are the conditions that that family is operating under? And what are the externals that are impacting that? And some of these things intentional, or just a nature or an effect of a type of society that we live in? And this is where we have these discussions on how do we move toward a healthier society, toward a better path, so that perhaps within our own self, and the answer could be within our own self-love and how we reflect that out. But in essence, when there's a consistency in general, you have then a healthy society. But when you have these partitions of a few, but in general, the whole is not healthy, it's like a cancer that just metastasizes and grows out of control and even eats up the healthy. So these are kind of just based on a conversation of what you're talking about is the things that are kind of popping into my head. And maybe you could add some insight into that, Robert or Mandelynn or Rajiv, but I'm just thinking out loud.
I mean, it's spot on. Like when you look at like especially the politics, the politicians in our country, this is daddy wounds being freaking vomited out on all of us. And it's like and we're watching this and then we're condoning it in the homes. Like so I went to um an event that I'd already agreed to go to in Carrie Lake when she was running for senator out here in Arizona. And I was like almost not gonna go, but I was like, I already told my friends I was gonna go. So, anyways, I went. And it's one thing to watch grown adults call other adults names and using this language on TV, but to actually witness it in person. And I was just sitting here watching all of my friends who love to say like how, spiritually advanced they are, cheering this on. And at the end, she asked, "Does anybody have any questions?" And I really had to bite my head because I'm sitting here in front of, a bunch of red hats, and I'm just gonna raise my head and say, "Hey, um, if your child came home from school and used the same language that you used, would it be acceptable?" I wanted to say it, I bit my tongue. And to be honest, I wish I would have said something. But this is what we're raising our children to. We're condoning it. We're condoning it. And these kids are growing up and watching our leadership because that's all they do. Kids, they're just a sponge for everything that we do. They're watching this leadership and then they're going to turn into leaders. And so when I was writing my book, I was like, what is the core to all the problems in the world? It is our families. It is 100% our families. And if number one, we have one responsibility as parents to raise children in a world that's deemed as safe and beautiful. And if we can give them that vision at a very young age, then we can rear them to be powerful leaders. But the system, this another thing, the system is designed to tear parents apart, to tear families apart. Take both of the parents out of the home, and now who's now raising the children? The system. Slavery never ended, it just evolved. So if you look at our schools, you drive by any school, it looks like a prison.
Mhm.
Everything is a prison. Everything is on the same time. You go, you've got breaks, you've got certain times that you go to work, you got breaks, and then you take your work home with you, right? Why do we have homework in school? That's ridiculous. But it's to teach you to take your work home. And then it puts you either prison system or in the corporate system, keeping you in this perpetual cycle that you can never get out of. Of course, you can get out of it. There's a way to get out of it, but that's the system is designed to keep families ripped apart, to keep their system working. And you don't change a system that's working. People say the system's broken. No, it's not. It's perfect. You got to create a new system. And so that's my movement. That's what I'm working on, creating a new system.
It's refreshing to hear you say this, that slavery never end, because people will take offense to that. And it's just
It's
the
the truth.
shackles.
Be offended all you want, but it's the truth.
The shackles are invisible. That's the only thing. And we can say, as far as a perspective and self-reflecting, but it's being aware of these things, right? And Robert always talk about observing it. I'm with you on so many levels, Mandelynn, about understanding the system, the game, and how it enslaves people. And sharing that knowledge, I always say, what game are you playing and what are the rules of the game?
Mm-hmm.
And people get sucked right into it without acknowledging or being aware of what game they're falling into, what are the rules of the game, and what is the outcome.
That's what I always say. Play the game, but don't be of it, and understand the terms of the rules of engagement.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
don't be of it. But you have to play it because we're here. We're in it. It's just a giant game of chess.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is so structured in a way that you're not necessarily trying to go up against it. It's going to overwhelm you, right? The momentum and the power of it. But again, it's if you look at it as like a pendulum, if you know that pendulum's going to swing back and you understand it, you know enough to step out of its way.
Exactly.
Its swing.
One thing that I think might be helpful in terms of, talking about changing society and what that represents is to realize on a certain level, our idea of society is an external thing and it's an illusion on a certain level. I think the real challenge in raising kids or in just being yourself is to create your world in a way that you're coming from love, like you said, you're aware of all these external things, politics in this country, wars around the world, but it's not your world. You don't, in your mind, your world is something you create for yourself with certain values. And that's the challenge because can you ever point to a time where you thought the politics was so overwhelmingly progressive or wonderful? No. I mean, and truthfully, is your happiness dependent on who's the president of the United States or whether there's a war going on in the world? When you look back at your life, it's really not true. It's not dependent on that. So to defer to these external events and say until the world changes, until the system changes, is a mistake, I think. I think you have to just create your world and be so strong and so resilient in your world and so at peace with yourself that it almost doesn't matter what the news is reporting. Yeah, you have to be in that world, but you're not of it. And Jesus actually said that, be in the world, but not of it.
That's a
And
good
that's the real challenge,
remove all of these, all these external factors of whether it's governments, whether it's schools, whether it's prisons, and let's just say we're back in the jungle. Instead of that system, it's going to be a lion, a bear, or something, or the weather. There's always going to be something, right? And you just have to have that awareness to have this
yeah,
to survive in that environment, in the
absolutely.
environment that you're in. And if you, one of the things they say is if you can't serve, growth is being able to have an effect on the environment that you're in. And if you can't impact that environment or have an effect to create the environment that you want, then you have to get out of that environment. You have to move or make whatever change you need to make. So there's always going to be some form of challenge, and that's part of our journey and our existence. And going back to what you talked about, it's, on the one hand, you can have an extreme point of view where it says no accountability, you're not responsible, you're a victim of everything. And we hear that from one side. And on the other side, it's we have to hold everyone accountable for their actions. And while they're speaking these things, they're saying, but they're doing the opposite.
Yeah.
And so if you really look at both, you just just detach from it and be like, I'm washing my hands from any of it because they're
Right.
it's their little game that they're playing, and I'm not going to
But
participate.
the only answer to that, Josue, is you have to really act with integrity with yourself. And it's not about what somebody else thinks about your behavior. It's what you think about it and whether you feel good about what you're doing or not. And that's called integrity. And unfortunately, in the society we're living in, I think there are very few people who act with those parameters, who even think about that. And that goes to a question I had for you, Mandelynn. Why do you think that so few people are willing to accept responsibility for their actions in our society?
Oh, it feels good being a victim. It feels good that it's your fault, Robert, and Josue's fault and Rajiv's fault. Like, it feels good. It feels good to know that I am not responsible for anything, that I can blame the government. If I can blame my parents, I can blame money. I can blame anything. I love this. The road to heaven feels like hell, but the road to hell feels like heaven, right? And so it's like you can sit here and it feels good. It feels so good. Let me go sex it away. Let me go drug it away. Let me go drink it away. Let me go party it away. And it feels good. It's like I wrote a poem. It's called Addicted to the Drip. All these things, the money, the sex, the drugs, and all of that. It's like, oh, yes. And then that wears off, and then you're in worse position that you were in before. It's like what I have gone through spiritually, what I have gone through emotionally, I wouldn't wish that on a single soul. I mean, it was hell going through all of that. But where I'm at right now, I wish everybody could experience it, but I know not everybody has the courage and the bravery and the guts to go through it. And I'm sure every single one of you on here can say you guys wouldn't be on this call if you didn't go through the hell it took to get to where you're at. A lot of people don't have the guts to do that because it's so much easier to blame, right? That's why there's only the 55th I Ching, it goes from victimhood to freedom because there's only two states. You can only be a victim or you can only be free. It's the only one that only has two states. You can't have one or the other. A lot of people, oh, when I was awakened. No, you can't be awake. You can't be awake and asleep at the same time. You're either awake or you're not awake. And if you're awake, you're completely accountable. You're completely responsible. There is no victimhood. There is no blaming. There is no nothing. You understand that you are the creator of your reality, of your universe, of your world, and then you have the power to help shape shift other people's realities into what you are. But other than that, it's projection. It's nothing but projection.
And how many people do you meet who have that philosophy that you just espoused? Do you meet a lot
Oh,
of
there's,
people?
there's, there, it, the world only needs a few of us to raise up the consciousness. I was just having this conversation last night with my friend. He was over for dinner, and I was like, most people are sheeple. You keep people entertained and you keep them fed, and they're fine. They're complacent. They're not going to rise up. Why do you think our politics have turned into the NFL? It's the exact same thing. You divide people. Everything is a consequence of division. There is a wonderful documentary out there called The Great Hack. If you guys haven't seen it, see it and show it to everybody. They've done it through the social media, they've done it through everything. They tried it in little small countries, and then they were like, oh, let's see if we can influence the Clinton Trump administration with the same. And they absolutely did. You keep people divided and they can run rampant. And so the only way which is ironic that, it's literally written, united we stand. We have to become united in order for us to come together.
Right.
So
And
I,
until that happens,
so I have
yeah,
a
I'm sorry.
yes,
Go ahead.
I have kind of like a comment on what Josue said, which was, I think, very, I think, telling to, sort of like the kind of like the path that you're on or the movement that you've begun, Mandelynn, which is about like he said that if you cannot change an environment, you need to leave that environment, get out and find another environment. But that kind of the flip side of that is about changing the environment, right? And you were talking about how we need to really focus to a degree almost away from the macro and onto the micro, which is the family, the family unit, because that pretty much is the building block of society as we know it. And if that is, let's say, susceptible to damage or weakness or whatever you want to call it, that's going to see a domino effect into the world because at the end of the day, we all come from families of a degree. So I wanted to kind of ask you, Mandelynn, because I know that in an earlier conversation prior to the green room of this call, we had about how you kind of have like a vision of how the family of the future is going to be potentially impacted in a way that's a little bit different than how systems are as of right now. If that's something that you'd like to share with our list of just to maybe briefly socialize that idea here before, let's say, it takes root and maybe becomes a larger movement.
Yeah, I mean, well, first I want to say, first I'm going to comment on the getting out of the environment, right? So, you can't see the psychosis if you're in the psychosis. You have to leave the psychosis to be able to come in, which is why it's so important to travel, right? This is why our system in the United States, 87.7% of Americans do not hold a passport.
What?
Because 87.7% of people in the United States do not hold a passport.
Oh my God, that's
And we have the
crazy.
strongest passport in the world. Why? Because they don't want us to see how the other systems work. So we don't come back here to try and change it. Okay. So now to lead into the other thing. So in Israel, they all have to go into military service, right? But before they do that, they have to take like a year sabbatical. And so all the kids after high school, they go and they take a sabbatical, they go travel the world before going into their military service, right? So traveling and activating these ley lines with the points in your body help you to become more conscious so you can go and make some changes when you're living with other cultures and seeing how other cultures live. And so what we need to do in order to initiate a greater society is bringing back culture and the indigenous ways of living back into society. When you live, you're from India, so you understand. I haven't been to India yet, but in Indonesia, they live in these family compounds and they bring in outsiders. Everything's like, and we're always in so many cultures. I've lived all over the place. Hawaii is like that in many of the cultures. Um, Bringing things back to the indigenous and not stripping that indigenous, the spirituality out of the home. It's time to bring, for me, it's time to bring God back into the home. It's time to bring God back into medicine. It's time to bring God back into the schools. It's time to bring God back into science. And the reason why we had like the Mayans and the ancient Egyptians, spirituality and science were always supposed to go hand in hand. But then at some point they decided, oh, we're just going to take the science and strip the spirituality out. So the spirituality started flatlining while technology started to skyrocket. So now you've got people like Elon Musk saying, oh, we're going to recreate God through technology. Are you kidding me right now? But people are buying that because they're on ChatGPT and AI thinking that that is now the new God, right? So in order to reestablish our family unit, where you have to bring God back into all things. And so that is my mission and my purpose here on the planet.
That's
And
amazing.
what
Thank
you
you.
said, Madeline, it's a disconnectedness of spirituality, of spirit, and putting the 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 carriage before the horse. And because we have this technology in front of us and saying that, oh, it's amazing, we're so brilliant, instead of looking at the bigger essence of it all and what it's all within, and that it's all created by God.
Exactly.
And when we don't understand the source, we're already lost to begin with, in my opinion.
Hey guys, let me remind you that the ancient civilizations had super sophisticated technology that was accessible to them. And we just discard that. We bemoan that because we think our scientific advancements are so far superior to that. Here's the news flash. They're not. The ancient civilizations had access to energy and the source, and they created some amazing things around the world that we can't explain with our logical scientific minds. And today, most humans are totally disconnected from the ability to access that magical part of the source. They have no clue because they're so dependent on technology and they're so in awe of science. So that's something to bear in mind as well.
Oh,
What I equated to,
a million percent. And this is like, so this is perfect for something I wanted to say earlier, but that was a perfect segue into, Jesus said, you will not get to the gates of heaven without seeing through the eyes of a child. What does that mean? Imagination, creation. You're locked into source. That's our spiritual intelligence. From the age of 0 to 7, you are developing your spiritual intelligence. Your environment around you is stripping that out of you. But what if every child, like imagine a world that from this day forward, every single child was not ripped of their spiritual intelligence, that they were born to understand that they are made in the likeness and the image of their creator, therefore they are a creator. Imagine what that future would look like.
The problem that I have with it's so interesting that you say that because one of the things that has come to me in the last several months is I want to get back to the consciousness I had when I was 12 years old, totally open to the universe, totally pure and just open, literally open. But what happens is that as people, it could be at the age of 8 or 10 or 12, it doesn't matter. But people start to develop an ego, and that is what causes people to lose their connection to their magical powers, to what they can actually create, because they put all this value on these external things, who they are, what they want to become, how much money they have, where they live, all that stuff becomes super important. And that's something that's really hard to strip humans of. And the other thing that I noticed, are you familiar with Osho, the writer Osho,
I
the
am.
Indian writer?
Mhm.
Well, one of the things he talks about, and I think we can all admit that we've seen this, the human proclivity to focus on the negative in every situation.
Absolutely.
Why do you think people slow down when there's a highway crash? Because they're looking at it. They want to see it. And they're happy that they're not in it. It's human nature. Whenever anything happens, most people look at the most negative aspect of it. And Osho says in one of his books, I think it's called Courage, The Joy of Living Dangerously, that if you could shift your default mechanism from negativity to self-love, you got it made. But from an evolutionary point of view, we humans are so used to focusing on the negative, and it was a survival mechanism that got handed down through thousands of years. But we have to change it. To create the new kind of model that you're talking about, society starts from within. People have to understand that.
Absolutely. But it's easy to blame you, Robert, for all my problems.
it starts from within. And
Again,
another thing
easy to
too
blame
is
you all for all my problems.
it's understanding we don't have to compete. We just have to present the very best of ourselves. We don't have to compete. And there's this idea that you have to lose and I have to win. And it's so flawed.
Yeah, the zero sum game.
Sorry
Yeah.
that we do that. It's like, but then finally you get to a place where it's like there's four of us on this call, but there's not. There's one, right? It's like each and every single one of you is just a mirror reflection of myself because you're part of my movie, right? And it's like I don't need to compete with anybody. It's like no, because when you win, I win, right? And so and I wish people could understand that. Like when you win, I win. And if you're feeling inadequate, go fix that.
Right.
So and that's where I've been, like, because I've experienced obviously a lot of jealousy in my life. I'm like,
Sure,
you know
sure.
what? Time out. Time out. You're on a timeout.
But you know,
I'll
the
heal
the other
that. That's not me. That's you.
right, the other factor in human existence is there's so much selfishness. You know, so much behavior is directed towards self-advancement. And that's a hard thing to overcome and to change on a societal level. Maybe it's just human existence, you know. And in the evolution of the human spirit, maybe we will evolve to the point where we don't need that. We don't need to be so concerned about ourselves because we would have the belief that we're all going to be taken care of. Imagine that.
I think it's a program. We're programmed to strive for certain things. And that's what, and as a collective, we allow that to then be the value. And so then that resonates to us. To be valuable, I must achieve this. I must have this so that I am viewed as being valuable.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to the whole individualism, right? Because we're individuals and we're also a group of individuals that are forming society, but then we all have our individuality, which expresses in a variety of ways. And obviously, everyone is kind of pursuing, back to what Robert was saying, like we are all pursuing our level of perfection, but we all have our individual goals, our dreams, our hopes, our aspirations that we're pursuing. And then sometimes those hopes and aspirations may conflict with another's hopes and aspirations. And that's just kind of like the nature of this, let's say, so-called experiment that we're in. So I think it's one of those things where I think eventually people will go, on their various paths, realize the truth of everything that's specific to them and potentially converge onto a common truth that maybe helps to bring us together. But I think that journey is I think unique to everyone. And some, like what Mandelynn was saying, some, experience it sooner, some experience it later, but that's the whole essence of existence. It's that kind of like that learning, the experience of it. It's I think more so the experience than the destination.
Absolutely. It's like going back is we were talking about like outside influences and things like that. I back in 2020, I lost everything. I was like on top of the Empire State Mount, like state building, right? I was at the height of everything. And like that, it was gone. Everything was gone. My perfect relationship was gone. My business was gone. My money was gone. My lifestyle was gone. I had I was down to $7. I had $7 left in my name. I had all my money was invested in these conferences that I was curating. And obviously I didn't get any of that money back because of COVID, right? And I was devastated, like my whole life completely shattered. I lost about $300,000 in projected income for that year. It was just gone. Everything was gone. And that was brutal. And that's the hell that you go through. But what I learned through that process was who am I in the face of nothing? Who am I without my money? Who am I without my image? Who am I without the relationship? Who am I without my lifestyle? Who am I without my business? Who am I without anything? Who am I without anything? And this
Well,
goes,
who were you without all that stuff? I'm curious to see what you think.
so I like people I was notar I like every I was notarized because of all of those things. And I relied on those things. I did. I did. I loved my lifestyle, right? But then I had to get back into me. And now, who am I? Now I can have everything and I can have nothing and I'm unchanging. And that is to be able to find the peace within the chaos. I'm not who you say I am. You can tell me that you love me and you adore me and you can spit in my face. It doesn't matter to me because I know who I am. I know my value. I don't call God, I don't say a child of God because I look at God as my lover, my beloved, my one and only, right? That's my relationship with God, but that is as long as I have my beloved by my side, I'm everything. Whether I'm living on the streets or if I'm living in my big beautiful home that I'm in right now. Doesn't matter.
I think you said something
Well,
important, and that is you know your value, and that's lacking so often that we are externally seeking that value when it's within us, right? The kingdom of heaven is within us.
Amen to that.
The treasures have to be, it's not in the outer world that you're going to find the treasure. It's in the inner world, and you have to do that inner work, and it is work.
Lots of
Right.
work.
Yeah, that's right.
But-
That's facts.
Right, but there's no reason why we can't have a combination of that inner peace and what's available in the outer world. I think that's the ultimate.
Oh, that's just it. Like once you have that and you've attained that, now you're not relying on that for your value because
Right.
that's our inheritance. So if you lose it, you're not attached to it and it doesn't shake you, you know.
It's
I
all
just
right.
I was talking to a guy a couple days ago, and this he was in a car accident, and this kid was driving on the wrong side of the freeway on purpose in his McLaren. And he was driving down and he clipped this guy. He spun 3 times, and then he ended up the kid, he was 19 years old, hit this woman and her 12-year-old daughter. Both cars blew up in flames and killed. He was suicidal. Why was he suicidal? Because he was making about $100,000 a month on YouTube, but YouTube decided to change their system or their algorithm. Now he's going to make nothing. And so he decided to not only take himself out, but take the world out with him because he was valued based off of that money. That couldn't happen to me now in this day. I was like, all right, I made $100,000 last month and I've got nothing. All right, let's rebuild, right? That's God redirecting me into another. This just wasn't serving me anymore. It's time to redirect. That's it.
And I think
But
one of
we
the
are allowed. God made a Toyota Camry and God made a Bugatti, right? We can have whatever the heck it is that we want. I am going to choose the Bugatti. My nephew
Sure.
swears to God I need a Bugatti. So I'm buying myself a Bugatti to appease my nephew.
what they say is sharpen those life skills. Keep
Absolutely.
sharpening the life skills.
That
Is what you want to be
amazing.
possible.
Yeah, so I think on that solemn note of Mandelynn getting herself a Bugatti, I think we can probably bring this very illuminating discussion to an end. I think, Mandelynn, we would love to have you on the show again because there's just like so much to talk about, and you have such depth and breadth of lived experience and knowledge that I'm sure we're just scratching the surface of. So just want to like thank you for stepping away from your packed schedule to spend some time with us.
Yes, thank you so much. This was fun. I had no idea where the conversation was going to go, and so I'm very delightfully surprised that this is I love talking about this. So yeah, this is great.
Well, good luck in getting that Bugatti.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, we're feeling the love. I'm feeling the love from this whole conversation. I want to just throw it right back at everybody and hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
I received
Yeah.
it.
Right on.
Happy extended holiday weekend, since we're on the eve of Memorial's Day weekend, right? So,
Well, I
Let's
don't know if
celebrate
we're all
life.
on here are entrepreneurs, so do we get an extended weekend? Because I don't.
yeah, I mean,
It's
I was
just
like, a day off? Are you kidding me? There's holidays.
This is
Holidays
Bruno.
exist.
that's their game. Our game keeps going.
Right.
exactly.
No, have a great weekend, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All
Bye.
the best.
Bye.
Congratulations on
Thank
your
you.
book.